Hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for joining in today. I am Aditya Oberoi. I'm one of the MLH coaches here from India, and I'm really happy to be here with all of you. So today's session is going to be quite a fun one. It's a technical session, of course. We're going to be talking about different cloud technologies, how cloud technologies help, plus then go on to see a few hands-on demos. So it's going to be nice. It's going to be interesting. I'm gonna present a little first, um, discuss cloud technologies as I have seen, as I am aware, and then I'll take you to a demo after that. So it'll be interesting. I hope you all enjoy that. Um, I'm definitely excited about this because cloud technologies are something that I very regularly work with. I definitely enjoy working with them. So I'm excited to share that with you all. Quick point, in case any of you have worked with any cloud technologies, please let us know in the chat. That would be absolutely awesome. All right. So make sure to do that. Is Azure again? Yeah, I mean, I do demos with Azure particularly because that's one that I'm actively working with. I enjoy working with. So I'm going to be talking a little more about Azure. But that being said, there are contrasting technologies. I mean, similar ones that compare with each other on all of these platforms. So that's going to be there. And Azure works well for me because I heavily work with .NET. So that's an example that I'm going to be using because I have APIs built. But the best part is any knowledge of these basic concepts is actually going to cross transfer. So the fundamental concepts that I discuss first before I jump into the demo will actually be present for all cloud platforms and not just Azure. So that way, I think it should make it a little better for you. For any one of you who wants to get started with cloud at least. Can I develop C Sharp? Yeah, you can. .NET is cross-platform. You can build with .NET on Linux. C Sharp, that's totally there. So yeah, great point. As I was mentioning, first I'm gonna have a small little presentation that I worked on some time back, and this is really just gonna talk more on what cloud is, how cloud helps, what benefits cloud has, um, some use cases, potential ways where it makes life easier for us, and then I'll take you to a demo where I'll show you how cloud actually does help a lot in our development process. So I'm gonna play around that with a simple API. All right. Um, Heroku is a tool you can definitely learn about as well. We're going to be delving a little more into infrastructure and platform as a service offerings of public cloud here too in this case. But that being said, I believe you can find Heroku in the GitHub Student Developer Pack as well. So that's pretty nice. So no, that has nothing to do with that. Azure loves Linux as well. Microsoft loves Linux. So you don't need to worry about that. There's no sense of hypocrisy. You have to work with whatever tools are best for you at the end of the day. So I mean, if you want, I could show how to create a Linux based VM on Azure as well. We can do that in the middle along with the demo of a solution I push. So don't worry, there's nothing of that sort. Yeah. We have fun with all of those things. All right. Anyway, I think I'm seeing a query around free domains. Quick point: you can actually jump any of our hosted by MLH hackathons on the weekends. We have, um, you know, challenges around domains. So those are places where you can get a free domain for yourself. Now, apart from that, of course, as far as domains go, the GitHub Student Developer Pack is a great tool as well. So you can have a look at either of those. They've got great offerings. All right. Now, yeah, before I jump into the presentation, first thing we want to do is make sure we're checked into our event. So I'm going to bring up my screen in a second. All right. Let me share. Yep. So First thing what we need to do is we want to make sure we're checked into the day, of course. So in order to do that, all you need to do is hop over to hackpack/Aditya. All right. I'm going to showcase the link. I'm just sharing the link in the chat. Um, it's now up on the screen as well. You can just register for local ag learn using this link here. Along with that, all you need to do is, I believe we're at day 6 now. It's been quite a few days. Yeah. So from there, you just need to go ahead, you know, go ahead, go to day 6. If you're not registered, you'll see a button that says register and check in. Um, you can do that as well. You can also use the link hackpack/learn daily check-in to check in here into the day as well. All right. So I'm gonna throw this link here in the chat as well. So you can do that. All right. After that, the third step, of course, that is just as important is well to check into the event. So I'm gonna share the check-in link for the event here in the chat in a second as well. Please bear with me for a second. I did share it in Discord, so you can find it in Discord if if you haven't seen it there. But in any case, I've shared the link here in the chat. You need to hop over and well visit the link I've just shared here. That's gonna make sure you register and check into the event. I forgot I need to check in here as well. um, yep. So that's the sort of notification you'll get on both cases. Make sure you're there. This link here is just gonna take you back to Twitch with us. So that's convenient in any case. But yeah, make sure that you're checked in for both of these. All right. So those are a few preliminary steps that we need to accomplish before we get started. I'm gonna give you all a minute to do that. After which I can start jumping into my content. In the meantime, if there's any queries you have, feel free to ask in the chat here. Um, I'll try to take them the best that I can. But definitely, seeing the buzz as far as challenges go, there's a lot of different solution challenges that you can build and you can leverage cloud in these, right? I do believe that well, something like cloud isn't necessarily, you know, it's not something that's dependent on maybe whether there's a separate track or there's a separate uh, price for it or not. It's something you can leverage in a lot of your hacks. So I build with cloud all the time. Even in the last session on computer vision that I was at, I was essentially talking about cloud and how you can leverage cloud for these purposes. So we've got some amazing offerings on cloud platforms, and you can leverage all of these, to build better, quicker. It's great. It's awesome. Have I completed my graduation? No, I haven't. I'm in final year. I'm a final year student right now. Yeah, for the check-ins, I shared the links earlier. You can find them in the chat. Um, Make sure to do that. You can also find the event check-in on the Discord announcements. All right. How do you get into cloud? We're going to talk about how you can get started with cloud here. That's something I'm going to be helping out with. So it's not something you will need to worry too much about immediately. All right. But we're going to do that. DevOps is another step where we talk about, bring that's another philosophy altogether and another space that brings together developers and folks managing the infrastructure. That's another step ahead. So first, I'd recommend getting into the fundamentals, understanding all of that, and you know that there's a lot of time and scope for that. As far as the links for the check-ins go, yeah, for the overall local hack day learn, that's the link we have. Hackpack/Aditya. For the daily check-in, all you need to do is, that's the link. That's the common link. And for this particular event, um, I can share the link once again. So, all right, if I talk about my personal domain, I am in developer relations. I'm currently working part time with AppWrite, which is an open source backend as a service. And then apart from that, as far as development work goes, I love working with .NET. I do a lot of backend dev stuff. I'm trying to learn a bit of JavaScript now, so that's there. Yeah. I haven't yet been to the US for MLH meetups. I joined MLH in a remote scenario, but hopefully, one day I do hope to go there for to meet up with the rest of the team. Thanks a lot for that. So yeah, now that been hanging around for quite a bit, I'm gonna bring up my little presentation that I have, just to discuss how we can work with cloud tech, and then we'll get to the demo. So, I mean, this presentation is not gonna be a very dedicated platform centric. It's gonna be heavily platform agnostic. But that being said, with the demo, we're gonna be leveraging Azure. I'll show you how you can deploy an API, how you can create databases. Um, we can show a little bit of serverless, and if there's time after that, I'll showcase a bit of VMs. So there's gonna be different stuff I'll show, mostly demo solutions. I don't want to rush into creating something heavy at the moment immediately, but I'll show you how you can leverage these, because cloud platforms actually make it really easy to build faster and better. So that's there. So you know that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be having fun with cloud. I see a few queries around my personal details. That's something we can get into later on. Let's not discuss that on stream right now. All right, I'd be grateful for that. I'm just bringing up my presentation. I believe it should be visible. I guess it is. So that's just cloud computing that I'm. This is a very basic presentation. After which I'll get to our live demo as well. All right. So when I talk about cloud computing, I think it's a domain, a buzzword we've had for a while, but not all, a lot of us 100% understand what cloud is, how we can leverage it, how it benefits us, right? Because we've been hearing cloud this and cloud that, but we don't actually know what cloud is. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now. I'm going to first talk a little about what cloud is, right? So simply put, cloud computing is the delivery of computing services, including server, storage, databases, networking, software, analytics, intelligence over the internet, to offer faster innovation, flexible resources, and economies of scale. So with cloud services, you're only paying for what you use, helping lower your operating costs, run your infrastructure more efficiently, scale your solutions when the time changes. Because this is a solution that really helps a lot of us, hobbyists, smaller businesses, startups, all of that. Because let's think about it. Traditionally, what would have happened is that to run your solutions, make them accessible to the world, you'd have to get your own servers, deploy your solutions on them, have dedicated teams maintaining them. um, if they went down, that was another problem altogether. And what a few of these organizations years back started doing, organizations like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, these are three of the largest public clouds, so I'm going to mention their names. um, so what they started doing is they started delivering these services over the internet, which prevented a lot of us from actually having to purchase our own hardware and leveraging these technologies directly. So it does decrease our costs for us, because you don't need a high amount of initial capital to leverage cloud services, because, well, you don't have to buy infrastructure. You can simply pay as you go, pay per use. Um, with these organizations, and that way you can keep scaling up or scaling down as you need to. So it does save a lot of expenditure for organizations. So it helps a lot of budding organizations and solutions there. So, when we talk about the benefits of cloud, I think we'd mentioned a couple of those things earlier, but the first one, of course, as mentioned, is cost. Cloud computing eliminates capital expense of buying hardware and software and setting that up and running on-site data centers. So, when we talk about those, you're counting racks of servers, you're talking round the clock electricity for power and cooling. We're talking about IT experts dedicatedly for managing that infrastructure. Because all of those costs, can actually reach a substantial amount at the beginning. It does require a high amount of capital to set that up. And cloud does eliminate all of that expense. Secondly, speed. Most cloud computing services are provided self-service and on demand. So even vast amounts of computing resources can be provisioned in minutes, and typically with just a few mouse clicks. So that gives so many businesses a lot of flexibility, and it takes off the pressure of capacity planning, because you can keep scaling up, both vertically and horizontally as you need to. So, with vertically, you'd improve the type of resource. Horizontally, you'd increase the number of resources you're allocating. And you can keep doing that, based on your necessity, right? And all it takes is a few minutes to do that. Cloud computing services are available at a global scale at this point. And, that basically means, these services include the ability to scale elastically. And that means essentially, in cloud speak, that you can get the right amount of IT resources, like more or less computing power, storage, bandwidth, whenever and wherever it is needed. You can actually have separate allocations of resources for certain geographical locations if you need to. That's the sort of accessibility you get at a global scale. It does improve your productivity, because, like, on-site data centers would typically require a lot of racking and stacking, that's setup, software patching, like there's a lot of IT management chores essentially. But a lot of this is actually managed by the public cloud itself if you're working with cloud services. So it means IT teams can actually spend, more time on achieving the actual business goals than just these chores that are necessary. Performance is a big advantage we have with cloud platforms, because the biggest cloud computing services run on a worldwide network of secure data centers, which are regularly upgraded to the latest generation of fast and efficient computing hardware. And this offers several benefits over a single corporate data center, including reduced network latency for solutions. I just got a great question here in the chat, and it's great, because the next point is reliability of cloud computing services. Um, Public clouds, they make data backup, disaster recovery, business continuity a lot easier and less expensive, because data can be mirrored at multiple redundant sites on the cloud provider's network. So we're talking about a global network of data centers versus one place, right? Or when it comes to business critical data, you can set up you can set up data backup and recovery at multiple sites rather than a single one. So in case one data center has an issue, you have other centers at different geographical locations that you can leverage, to ensure that your system keeps running. That's, when I take you to Azure later on, I'm going to show you the list we get from where you can actually deploy, and that's going to give some context as to um, why there's a big reliability advantage with these. Last but not the least, one of the biggest benefits of cloud computing is security, because many cloud providers offer a broad set of policies, technologies, and controls that strengthen your security posture overall. That helps you protect your data, apps, and infrastructure from potential threats. So that's quite a lot happening with cloud, definitely. That brings us to a few different types of cloud computing, because I've been mentioning public cloud lately, and all of that happens. But There's a few others as well. Sure, there are, you, as far as privacy goes, they have a lot of security features that I was mentioning about. Um, when it comes to your own, resources, you can set up proper authentication and user management for any of your data. It isn't just openly accessible to everyone, because with if suppose, you have your own information, you would be a part of a tenant. Within a tenant, you would have your own resources, you would have your own authentication credentials protecting that. If you want to give access to someone, then that's a different aspect, that you can actually have and customize. So even within resources, you can allocate how much access a person has to each resource. All of that is enabled in your major cloud platforms. And no, data doesn't get mixed, if there is mirroring of, data at different places, it doesn't get jumbled. So that's definitely there. Just gonna have a sip of water. Allegations that AWS, I'm not 100%, um, I don't have enough, context in that to comment. That being said, um, yes, at the end of the day, I believe that they are, platforms are enabling a lot of security. I personally work with Azure regularly, so I try to remain a little more aware in that context. I know they've got amazing security features, so that's where I'm gonna, um, keep my comment on. So yeah, types of cloud computing. So, I've been saying public cloud, but there are a couple of others, like, you can actually have a private cloud as well. There is something called a hybrid cloud. So I'm going to talk a little more about these types to help you understand what sort of clouds are actually available to leverage. So the first one, as I've been mentioning, let's start off with public cloud. Public clouds are owned and operated by a third-party cloud service provider, which deliver their computing resources like servers and storage over the internet. Azure is an example, AWS is an example, Google Cloud Platform is an example of these public clouds. With the public cloud, all hardware, software, and other supporting infrastructure is owned and managed by the cloud provider. So you access these services and manage your account using a browser, and that's what I'm going to be showcasing. I'll be showcasing a public cloud because those are the ones we can access and leverage whenever we need to. All right. So that's a public cloud for you. Now, that brings a question that, if that's a public cloud, what exactly is a private cloud? Because if you think about it, it gets very close to, your on-center data, your on-site data centers, right? Yes and no. So when we talk about a private cloud, it refers to cloud computing resources used exclusively by a single business or organization. So this could actually be physically located on a company's on-site data center, but at the same time, there are some third-party service providers that will dedicatedly solely host a private cloud just for your organization. So a private cloud would be one in which the services and infrastructure are maintained on a private network and they're not publicly accessible. So this does, become a viable option for some organizations. If you do talk about something more privacy centric, you would end up, looking at solutions on this front as well. With that being said, of course, there's a difference of costs, right? Because this would be a more, dedicated specific, experience. It's something exclusively designed for a certain organization, so that does different create a difference in how costing would work and how availability of services would work. Third is hybrid cloud. So hybrid clouds actually combine public and private clouds, by, technology that allows data and applications to be shared between them. And by allowing data and applications to move between private and public clouds, a hybrid cloud gives your, business or solution greater flexibility, more deployment option, helps optimize your existing infrastructure, security, and compliance. So, if there's certain information, there are certain services you need, where you think private cloud would benefit you versus some where you think, where you're regularly scaling up and down and you think a public one is better. You can actually have that. No, I'd not changed the slides. I'm just discussing the different types right now. I'm gonna get to the next slide. Yeah. So that brings us to types of cloud services. Because I'm sure I mentioned platform as a service PaaS earlier. I guess is infrastructure as a service. We have SaaS, software as a service. But these are all terms, and it does bring us to the question: um, what do these really mean, right? So let's talk a little about these different types of cloud services here. The first one that I want to share about is infrastructure as a service. This is the most basic category of computing services, which is essentially you renting IT infrastructure from these platforms. So that would include servers, virtual machines, storage, networks, operating systems, and you rent these on a pay-as-you-go basis, essentially. So it's the most basic version. It basically says, you get infrastructure and then you can do whatever you want on top of that. Um, Highly bare bones. It does give you the most amount of control on your infrastructure, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that there is the most amount of setup work you need to do before um, actually deploying your solutions. So it benefits in certain scenarios where there is very heavy custom work that you need to do. It would be the equivalent of you keeping your data center and then having to set it up. So the keeping is done, having to set it up is the next step. Platform as a service refers to cloud computing services that supply an on-demand environment for developing, testing, delivering, and managing software applications. So this is actually designed to make it easier for developers to quickly create web or mobile apps without worrying about setting up or managing the underlying infrastructure of servers, storage, network, and databases needed for development. So this is something that I most often work with as a developer, because what this does is, on top of the hardware, it adds your environment. It's gonna have offerings, different environments and runtimes for different programming languages and solutions. It's gonna have features like CI/CD, authentication, all of that. So what PaaS does is, it does make life easier for developers to quickly build and deploy. Um, the only difference is, with this, you're not playing around heavily with the underlying hardware. So that is um, an aspect which you don't control as much in a PaaS solution. But that being said, if you want to deploy it faster, quicker, it's a great sort of offering. And yeah, I work most often with PaaS services, so I'm gonna be showcasing those. I'll probably showcase a little bit of infrastructure because you can create VMs, you can deploy them. So I might, if keeping in mind time, we might just check that out as well. There's another thing that another buzzword that we've been hearing about called serverless. Um, so first thing first, serverless doesn't mean there actually isn't any server. There is a server at the back end anyway. Um, but yeah, what serverless computing services do is, while overlapping with PaaS, it focuses on building app functionality without spending time continually managing the servers and infrastructure required to do so. Your cloud provider handles your setup, capacity planning, server management for you, and this architects are highly scalable, event driven. So if you want little solutions which start occurring only when specific events are triggered, these are great, and these allocate resources at the time of the trigger. So these actually do save a lot of costs. The only thing though is that these work best if you have a smaller solution. But as far as Google Cloud goes, yes, you do have a serverless solution. I think they're called Google Cloud Functions. I think that's the name. So if you search about Google Cloud Functions, they're essentially serverless functions for you. AWS has their Lambda functions, um, and Azure has Azure functions, which I love working with personally. So serverless is closer to PaaS than a SaaS offering. SaaS is a very different scenario, and when I talk about the examples of SaaS, it's going to help you understand a little better what we mean on that front. So software as a service is a method for delivering software applications over the internet on demand, and typically on a subscription basis. Major examples of this would be Google. docs, slides, um, Office 365. Those are SaaS offerings. So you're not controlling any infrastructure or hardware there. You're essentially leveraging a certain software that is being delivered to you um, on demand over the internet. So with SaaS offerings, cloud providers host and manage the application and underlying infrastructure, and they handle any maintenance like software upgrades, security patching. All you're doing is just running your application over the internet, probably through a web browser. So that's what SaaS is. It's essentially you just running a solution on the internet, like just a web application that you're subscribing to. Yeah. So serverless is closer to PaaS. It's not a SaaS offering. Now, as far as uses of cloud computing go, there are a few examples that I'll discuss, like few use cases how you can utilize cloud computing in your solutions. So the first one is if you want to create cloud native applications, basically just quickly build, deploy, scale applications for web, mobile, and APIs. Here you can leverage uh, take advantage of cloud native technologies and approaches like containers, Kubernetes, microservices architecture. You can take API driven communication and DevOps, all of these to build solutions um, native for cloud, of course. Secondly, you can test and build applications better. You can reduce your application development cost and time by using cloud infrastructures that can easily be scaled up and down. So if you want to deploy and test, you can use smaller testing resources and then take that over and deploy to a larger infrastructure. You can do that very quickly with cloud platforms. It's great for storing, backing up, and recovering data. You can do that a lot more cost efficiently and at a massive scale, because you could transfer your data over the internet to an offsite cloud storage system that is accessible from wherever you want, and whichever device you want. And it that isn't something that has to be accessible to every device on the internet. It can be limited to just specific devices that you want. So that is an option you can always have. Cloud platforms do help you analyze data better because you can unify data across teams, divisions, and locations on the cloud, and then leverage services um, such as quite a few of the ML and AI offerings that these platforms have to uncover insights from your data and make more informed decisions. And since you're leveraging the infrastructure up here rather than your own, uh, you know, on-site infrastructure, you can scale up that whenever and wherever you need to. Audio and video streaming is something you can do. You can connect with your audiences anywhere, anytime, on any device with HD video, audio, and with a global distribution. So yeah, think about how YouTube and all are served to you. That should give you some context. And yes, of course, you can embed intelligence in your solutions to engage with customers, to provide valuable insights for data captured. As a student, this might seem less important, but as you start working with audiences, as your solutions and your projects, if suppose they see an audience, that's where this is going to help you a lot. And of course, you can deliver software on demand. As we talked about SaaS, on demand software would let you offer latest software versions and updates around to customers anytime they need, anywhere they are. So it's pretty cool. Now that's a lot about a lot of theory about cloud that I discussed. We've had quite a lot. Let's just get off this presentation. Let's get a little hands on and have fun with a cloud platform now. So I'm gonna remove my screen for a second, just while I open up Azure. All right. I'm first gonna go off to the Azure website. That's like all I'm gonna do before that is just I'm gonna take you actually to the Azure for Students offer, considering well most of us here would be students, I believe. So let me do that now. That's the link for you because I'm gonna be taking the case of Azure. So that's the platform I work with most regularly. All right. That's why I want to leverage Azure here. Let's get started. That's the Azure documentation for you. That's the Azure for Students website for you, by which you can actually get credits free. Um, if you have a .edu ID, you can basically get them without a credit card. In case you don't, you can still get those. I do think it needs credit card verification though in that scenario. That's the only difference. This is also offered through the GitHub Student Developer Pack, by the way. So you can always have a look at that. Once you have your account, you can just go ahead, click on sign in. That's going to take you to the Azure portal login once. It seems like I was already logged in. So I'm just going to open my Azure portal now. Yep, it's opening up for us. There we go. That's the Azure portal for us. As you can see, I have quite a few resources running already. I have a little resource group. I have local hack day learn because like we were using this in the computer vision session. So yeah, you can get Azure for students through the GitHub student developer pack as well. That's definitely an option. I think to learn more on how you can leverage that, you can probably check out GitHub Student Developer Pack. It does offer Azure there too. Now this as a dashboard to some can seem like all right. Sometimes it might seem a little overwhelming. Don't worry too much. You can actually customize this for your purpose as well. All right, I'm just gonna zoom in a little. So yeah, that's the basic Azure dashboard for you. You've got a few different options and favorites here on the left side. You've got Azure services that people are often using on the right side. Um, for us, we'll check out how we can create resources, play around with some of these, have fun essentially. All right. So one thing I'm gonna do, just give me a second, please. I'm gonna take StreamYard here on my right, bring Azure here on the left because I want to play around with a few different stuff and I want my um, you know, my platform and my code in front of me. So I'm just here on the second screen with StreamYard. If you see me looking at the right, it just means I'm looking at you all. So that's not something you need to worry too much about. All right. So here we go. Yeah, that's Azure's basic dashboard for you. We've got our different services here. We've got the Cloud Shell up here, notifications, all of that. That shows my credits. We've got settings. That's the works, the basic stuff. We want to go ahead and create a resource because I want to showcase how you can deploy a little website. After that, I'll show you how you can deploy a database, a few different offerings here. All right. And I'll showcase a couple of my past solutions there as well to show how I've built APIs connected with deployments. So because I have some of that here. So we're going to do that. So the first offering that I want to show is one for deploying web applications. And this resource that we are going to be using here is called Azure App Service. So as I go to create a resource, you can see, um, that we have a few popular products added up here. And then along with that, you have all of these categories here. And what these categories do is you can select what kind of a service you want to create on your system and go ahead accordingly. So in our case, we see web app here, we see SQL database. These are two that will come up later on. We see function apps. These are the Azure functions I was talking about. Cosmos DB is a NoSQL solution, Kubernetes service. All of these accounts, all of this information is up here. Along with that, if we have other options like AI and ML. These are a few popular products, and they actually have quite a lot more in the marketplace. If you were there at the Use Computer Vision session, you would have seen that we leveraged these two services for us, right? So aside from that, database is a common one. I often leverage SQL database or Azure database for my SQL. You have cache for Redis. You have Postgres available. There's a lot of information here. There are developer tools like for Azure DevOps, all of that. GitHub Enterprise Server is there as well, so you can actually create a GitHub Enterprise Server from Azure. Let's see if you want to check out. We have mixed reality offerings. You know, there's a couple of those spatial anchors are there. You know, that's something you can look into if you're into MR stuff. For dedicated networking, more traditional stuff, you have application gateway. You have VMware's load balancer here. So virtual WAN. There's quite a few of these offerings for security. You know, so you can see that it's quite a diversified set of services that is available. For us, though, right now, what we want to play around is with the web, right? And here as well, you'll see a few different offerings. You'll see web apps, that's app service. You have static web app mentioned, which is Azure static web apps, that lets you deploy full stack solutions. It lets you work with single, um, single page applications, and it incorporates serverless functions if you want. So there's a few different offerings. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create a web app for us. Now, as you see here, you can see that we've got a link to create, we've got our documentation, then we've got MS Learn, which basically links you to a learn path to understand more about this tech, which is really cool. It's a great offering that Azure has, so that in case you want to learn about it, they've got the documentation there, but they've also got a full-fledged learning path for you, that helps you get started with Azure App Service. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna create a little you know a little app here. We're gonna do work in a new. We'll create a new resource group for us today. That's gonna be LHD Learn 2022 Cloud. Okay, I'm naming this as such because I want to refer it just for this session. The last one was made for our computer vision session, so I'm not leveraging the same one intentionally. All right. So I'm gonna click on OK there. You can actually create an instance with the web and a database as well if you want. So if I open this here, um, yeah, on separate pages, it does re-authenticate. But you can actually create a resource, a web app plus a database if you want. I'm not going to do that right now immediately because the solution I want to showcase first is just a separate one. But that being said, there are a few advantages to this. If you know you're going to be using a specific database at this moment, so you can select which one you want. It has support for four of these right now, like Azure SQL Server, Postgres, MySQL, and Cosmos DB for MongoDB. So that's essentially a NoSQL solution you have. For the web apps, you have quite a few runtime stacks. I'm just going to close this for now. We'll play around here. First things first, we need to name. I'm just going to call this Aditya LHD Learn 2022. All right. We're going to be publishing from code and not a Docker container right now. All right. The runtime stack that I'm going to be working with is .NET 5. You can use any stack you want. It's got quite a few offerings if you see. So, we've got .NET, we've got Java, there's Node here, there's PHP, Python's there, you've got Ruby as well. So there's quite a few runtime stacks you can work with. I'm going to be working with .NET 5 though. And I'm going to be deploying using Windows. Windows is actually something that works really well for .NET. I just prefer that. Now, you remember I was talking earlier about regions and how it's geographically allocated. So it asks me to see if I can deploy my app service from a region. And here, if you see, look at the number of regions we have distributed across the globe. You've got ones in US, there's Australia, there's multiple in a lot of these countries. You've got Brazil, Canada, Asia servers are there. I'm not 100% sure where the Asia server dedicated is located, but you've got something in France, Germany, Japan. There's stuff in India as well. You look at the diversity of locations you have. So that's exactly what they mean when they're talking about how it's globally accessible. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna select Central India here for me because it does work out well if you have a region that's closer to you. All right. For the app service, you can actually create an app service plan pricing tier that lets you decide. It does give you scale plan for your solution. I'm gonna create a new plan for myself. I'm gonna call it LHD Learn 2022. Okay. The fun thing is we can actually change the size of these based on our requirement. So if you're working on a less demanding load, or whether you're working on a production load, or something you want that is isolated from the rest of the world, there's a lot of offerings for that. And that's exactly what I was talking about. If you want just something for dev or testing purposes, you've got smaller loads. Like this one is free, for example. It offers 60 minutes a day of compute and 1 GB memory. Then you've got this little tier, which costs you less than 1,000 rupees a month. So that would essentially, I mean, equate to 10, $15, less than $15 a month. Um, that one's a little more expensive, but then it does offer more memory, um, more dedicated cloud units for running. So there's a few options there. Then you've got additional pricing tiers as well if you want. Um, Similarly, if you move into production loads, then you've got a different compute environment, something that's going to be a little more powerful. Accordingly, costs increase. Each of these have their own benefits. So you can choose whatever is best for you. For now, though, I'm just gonna go ahead and select the free tier because I don't need more compute. You can see what hardware includes. It's gonna have memory. There will be some storage. If suppose I was to go with D1, you can have the option for custom domains. If I would have selected this other one, there's options to manually scale, and it has Azure compute units that are dedicatedly just for your app service plan. So there's a lot of advantages for a different for all of these different pricing tiers, and you can choose which one works best for you. So when we're talking about 1 GB memory, that is specifically for your solution to upload and run your application. We're not talking about 1 GB memory for the entire system. That's exactly where a PaaS solution comes into play, right? Because you're not playing around with the underlying infrastructure. It says it has shared infrastructure, which means you know that's that's that infrastructure is not something you're managing. That's something that's anywhere around. The When we talk about the compute units here, that's something that's dedicatedly reserved just for your app service plan. But that's exactly what I mean. You're not gonna have to manage your underlying resources. So this doesn't refer to how much RAM or what processing you're getting. 1 GB memory is the storage you get for your solution. So that's what it is essentially. Yeah. So I mean, 1 GB memory is more than enough for us. We don't have a solution that heavy anyway. So that's what I'm gonna keep. We're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna apply this. Next step is deployment. Now, what this does is it actually allows you to set up CI/CD beforehand, if you want to. All right. I'm not going to do that immediately. I'm going to showcase that from a separate solution. Right now, I just want to show how you can quickly, we're going to do that later on. Not a separate solution. CI/CD will do later on. Because I first want to show, how you can just upload and, the different offerings we have. Um, this also makes sense if you don't yet have your code on GitHub, or if it isn't on GitHub, because GitHub Actions works if you're deploying from GitHub, but if you're not, that's a different matter altogether, right? So that being said, it's a convenient option. I do often use this, and you can set it up later if you want. It's not something you have to set up when you're creating. You can do that later. Next up, monitoring. You can set up monitoring for your solution. For that, Azure does have a little solution called Application Insights as well, which is actually pretty cool. It lets you see, track insights on all aspects of your application, whether we're talking errors, anything. It's actually pretty convenient. It's a great tool. So I love working with application insights, especially if I'm testing my solutions and I want to see where things are going wrong. Tags are something you can just use to categorize resources. I'm gonna just call this one as I'm just gonna name the tag event, and I'm gonna tag it as LHT Learn 2022. You don't have to keep a tag; it's not mandatory. It sure helps if you want to categorize and consolidate billing later on. So it's something that you can leverage for your work. That being said, it's not mandated. So after this, we're just gonna go ahead, review and create to check out what all we have, what all we've set here, if everything looks all right. I think it is for us. So I'm gonna go ahead, create. So once we start our deployment, we've got all of this. We're gonna have a look at the portal, once all of these resources are deployed here. In the meantime, I'll tell you what, I'm just gonna share my screen because I was shared on a window. I want to share my entire screen now. So I'm just gonna bring that up because I'm just gonna create a little, we'll just create a little demo solution live for us. Like just a demo.NET web app that we can play around with. Okay. So let me go ahead. Let me go to Git Bash. This is just for .NET. I'm just creating a demo solution quickly, and I'm showing what this is because that's gonna help us understand how CI/CD works and helps. We can do that later on in GitHub, but for now, I'm just gonna create a uh, new web app. So call it LHD Learn Test. This is gonna create an ASP.NET Core web app for us. I think it's gone up there. Never mind. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna bring that here. This is, well, just happens from time to time. Never mind. Sorry, I like to keep a consistent layout. I'm gonna keep this one here. So as you can see, this is just a quick little web app for us. If I okay, I shouldn't have closed my shell, but if basically if I run this, if I want to run this, yeah, .NET Watch run. This is gonna quickly deploy this locally and run. Okay, it's not. Okay, it's building. Yep. It's just gonna show us what this web app is, and that's what I'm gonna deploy for you right now, quickly. So after that, we'll go to code. You know, we'll shift it to a repo as well. In the meantime, let me see if my application is deployed, and yes, it is. So all if you can check out the details and see what all has been deployed for us. You can go ahead for the next steps. You can add authentication if you want, manage deployments. We're gonna be doing this soon. But for now, let's just hop over to our resources. As you can see here, we've got a few different information. So we've got our URL, which is where it's going to be deployed. We've got an FTP deployment information. The app service plan is available here. The resource group we created is visible here. So, if we go to that resource group, it'll show all the resources that got created here for us. Next up, we've got all of this information in case we have errors come up, any data in and out that happens. This access control, as I was talking about security, you can set access levels for these resources in case you want multiple people to be able to access. We have got deployment center, which lets us deploy our solution. So we've got a few different options here. We've also got quick starts for these. So if you want to just go ahead and look at those, there is a quick start to show how you can deploy a web app of these platforms. Beyond that, we've got configuration settings, authentication, all of these offerings. And configurations here, actually, this enables us to add environment variables in our solutions if we want. So that's definitely there. Authentication, of course, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to set up Active Directory, add an identity provider like Microsoft, Google, Twitter, one of those. It has offerings for that. For now, this is not something we need to worry about, but as you can see, there's quite a few options here that you can keep an eye out for. Now, I created that web app and I just ran that. So as you can see, we had this web app we created, LSD Learn Test. It's got a home page, it's got a privacy page that you can edit, and I'll show in the code as well how that works. Because we're gonna test its CI/CD offerings later, so we're gonna do that. And this is just a boilerplate ASP.NET web app, but we want to be able to deploy this to our website here, right? This web application. Right now, if we look at this link, what it's going to show is it's going to come up with a default app service page that shows that your app service is running and you can deploy your code, all of that. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. People saw GTA 5. Yes, that's a game I've finished a couple of times, and yeah, it's a good one. I don't play as much GTA Online, to be honest. I just mostly, but it's fun. FIFA, I'm a football person. Why did I choose .NET over others? Honestly, just because I like working with .NET. There's you can choose any platform you want. I just have the dot. I work regularly with .NET. I have the CLI installed, so it was just quicker for me to work with .NET. That's all there was. Um, but you can work with any of those platforms that you want. There's totally your choice. This is just a demo, right? I'm just trying to showcase the cloud service. So more than the language that I'm working with, just let's focus on the cloud services and those offerings. All right. So now we want to be able to deploy this little solution on our web page here, right? On our app service, our web app here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna close this for a second. Yep. I believe we're in my yeah, we're in the page. So I'm just gonna go ahead. We're gonna go to the code. We'll keep VS Code open next to us because it's good to work with. It's gonna show you how your application is present because you can actually deploy to Azure directly from Visual Studio Code as well. So this was the web app we had, the program we were looking at. This is the startup file. It just essentially configures your application to run, and the pages we were working with earlier, they're going to be visible here. So that was our index page and all of that. um, it's not something we need to worry about right now. We'll play around with this as well later when we're testing the CI/CD offerings. For now, all I want to do is um, I want to deploy this to app service. So fun thing about Visual Studio Code, if you go to their extensions, okay, that's the run one. Yeah, that's extensions. You can actually search for Azure. It actually has a general, you know, it has quite a few offerings you can work with, whether it's VMs, whether it's Azure Tools is the good one because it installs quite a few extensions for you. Right now, I just have app service functions installed and like resources is here because I leverage those the most. But you can actually have a setup for all of these and then directly work with them through VS Code. So, okay, for that code, I'm going to push it to GitHub, but it's not something you need to worry about. It's a very basic little solution I have that is there for testing, that we're going to have for testing. So, it's not something we need to worry about. You can work with any other code sample you want. It's just a demo showcase solution. So, for now, I have app service. So, I'm going to go ahead. That's my subscription I have, and I'm going to go and deploy it to a web app. Fun thing, if you actually don't have a web app, you can create it through here as well. But we, however, do. So we're going to deploy it to that. Okay. So the folder we want to deploy is LHD learn test, the one that I just created. I want to add a config here because that wasn't set already. VS Code lets us know all of that. Now it'll show that I have a few different web app solutions already created, some from different sessions, all of that, as is visible here. The one that we just created was Aditya-LHD learn 2022. I want to do that, but you can create a web app here as well if you want. So we're going to deploy to this one that we already have. And what this does is it's directly going to deploy here and override any previous deployment that we have, which cannot be undone, to be honest. For now, I'm going to skip this. But if you know that you're going to deploy a certain folder here, that's what there is. As far as the free resource goes, there are some options you can. Some services don't allow the free tier to be reused again and again on a certain location. So I think it'll depend from service offering to offering there. But right now, if I check out the window, it's gonna show me how it's deploying, and it shows that entire process for us. So after the deployment, this actually lets us know if our deployment is complete, what's happening on that front. It's just pretty cool that way. All right. And so what it's done is it's taken this entire deployment we had here to the 1 GB memory we were talking about, that storage earlier, right? So that's where it's deployed this for us, and it's gonna run it from there. So I'm gonna hop over back to my Azure, which is gonna look at the overview. And you can see there's suddenly been an increase in data input, right? Here, there's a little difference. There's a little request. So the requests came in earlier as well, but now if I reload this page, it's gonna show that website we made earlier, which is pretty cool. That was our localhost. I'm just gonna close that. It showcases the website we had, and it's deployed it here. What we want to do, however, is we don't want to manually deploy and redeploy it every single time that that we've got a solution we want to deploy, right? So for that, let's now push it to GitHub. We'll deploy it to GitHub, and we'll 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 take it from there. We'll connect CI/CD here. So for that, I'm just gonna publish to GitHub directly, and I wanna name this as a test. I mean, I wanna just rename my repo here, website, LST learn 2022. You can keep this private as well, since for CI/CD it actually connects your GitHub. You can check that. I'm gonna keep it public because I want you all to be able to see the GitHub action responses later on. So I'm just gonna publish to get a public repository. Really cool thing. It actually allows you to add what files should be included and whatnot, and it accordingly sets stuff in the git ignore. So I'm gonna remove bin in the obj folders here because those are the build files we have. All right. And then, I mean, this is also something we can remove. So I'm just gonna go ahead and this is gonna publish all of these to GitHub for us. So now if I go, I can actually show the repository that we have for this. It's published that to a repository for us that you can actually check out here. So that's this VS Code being pretty powerful and helpful for all of us. That's really what this is. And you can check out this website. But now what I want to do is I want to connect, I want to connect this Git repo to my app so that I don't want to have to keep manually deploying it every time I need to deploy it. So I'll go to deployment center now. We see settings here. I'm gonna select my code source. If you see, you can actually find quite a few here. You'll find Bitbucket. There's a local, you can connect with local Git repos. Azure repos, that's a pretty cool offering. If you work with Azure DevOps, you will find those there. You've got manual deployments as well. You can actually leverage OneDrive, Dropbox, and all. We're gonna use GitHub here. That's just convenient. And fun thing, apart from Actions, if you don't want to use GitHub Actions, you can use other build providers like Azure Pipelines or Azure App Service build service as well. Actions is comfortable though, it's pretty cool. Now, as I selected GitHub, you see that it's already signed in for me because I had done that in the past. Whenever you start this for the first time, you're gonna have to log into your GitHub account. So within this, I'm gonna select the organization. I want to deploy from my personal one. Once I select that organization, it's now loading all the repositories that this has. So it'll give me a range and list of all of those on my account. All right. For ours, I think we named it test website. So, I mean, this being convenient and just having everything, in an alphabetical order, I can find it easily. You can also select which branch you want to publish from. So it lets you do that. Now that, I've selected all of these options, I can check out the preview file of my workflow as well before it goes up there. So I'm just going to close this and we will save. So after this is done, it has now set it up. Let me just reload this once. You will now see it has added a workflow config here, and you will see an action running that is deploying this solution for me. It's the same workflow preview configuration, that file that I showed earlier, but it's now going to build and deploy directly from here. So you can actually look at these actions here. I mean, I've sent in my link. You can click on that. You can find them there. You can look at this live with me on my system. So, all of that deployment that was happening from VS Code can be done here. And I'm going to show you how this helps, because we're going to change this little solution here that we have, and we're going to just push it to GitHub, and I'll show you how it redeploys everything to Azure in a convenient manner. I just like looking at this. It just looks pretty cool, to be honest. Yeah. But you can see it's built the solution for us. Next up, it's also going to deploy it, right? So it runs with in two ways. There's two tasks there that run, and we're basically using a GitHub action here to do that. So it's going to deploy that for us, all of that. So now that it says this deployment is complete, you can actually find that reflected in the logs as well. And you can see here that that first one was a push deployment we had from VS Code. Here it has the message. It'll show our commit message. It'll show these logs here. So if I click here, it's gonna just take us to that GitHub action we have. That's essentially what it's gonna do. So you can see that here. If I showed the jobs initially, you can actually click on the deployment here as well. It's gonna be the exact same deployment for now, because we didn't really make any changes to the code. But suppose we wanna do that. Let's find out how that works. So I'm gonna go back to VS Code. Let's just close this. We're going back to our files. I shared that index with you, right? So I'm just gonna remove. I'm gonna edit this here. I'm gonna add welcome to local hack day learn 2022. Thank you for being here with us. Oh, I see. Yeah. Never mind. I'm not gonna play around too much. I don't think we need one of these. That was just a need tag from earlier. But you can see there's gonna be a little change here on this page, right? That was that first index page we had. So let's see what happens. Like, if suppose I go on, I run this locally. Let me just show how it's gonna look for us locally. I'm gonna go ahead, enter that little command I had, .NET watch run. This is gonna deploy it locally for us. And what that'll do is it'll let us see what it's gonna look like. So I just wanna show that to you. So as it runs locally now, the website should look like what I have here. I know there's a sizing mismatch. Never mind about that. But yeah, the website that's deployed right now looks like welcome, learn about that. That's the basic boilerplate. We've just changed it to welcome to local hack day learn 2022. So now this is what we want to see here, right? That's the fun thing that GitHub Actions will allow us to do. Let me go ahead now. I'm just gonna add a message, update index page. That's my commit message. I'm gonna have to pull here first as well, because we have a little update that happened, and then I'm gonna push. So if I look at GitHub now, there's gonna be a commit message there that says merge branch main, because what it did is it pulled back that addition of our GitHub workflow, and then it merged that with my update. So you can see there are 4 commits here, and it's running a GitHub action on this. So I just go to the details. It started building that now, which interest in you can actually find that here as if I refresh this, you'll actually see there's an in progress deployment going on right now, and the message is that commit message we had. So if I just hang around here, yeah, I can see that there's a workflow running. If I click on that, I can see which step of it is running as well. So right now it shows it hasn't yet got into the deploy. Now the build is okay, so it's the deployment starts. And actions let you visualize this. So any job you might have in the list, it's gonna show you how these are connected, what's running, and it's deploying right now. So it shows that to me. And once that is done, it's got a little progress bar there, which is cool. And once it's done, it gives us the link for that here directly. So, as soon as deployment is done, let me show you the deployment. It's deploying the Azure web app right now. It's downloaded from the build. As it's done, it's going to give us the link there. We also get a live update of this here. So now that I know it's deployed here, where we're going to get that update here ASAP. Okay, here it shows that the app deployment works. It's just finishing off the deployment in that case, probably. Yep, it's completing the job for us and just cleaning up processes. So I mean, it's already given us the URL here. If I go back now, oops. Yeah. So you can click that link directly from here. And now if you look at it, just by pushing to GitHub, we have the updated website, which is pretty cool. It does make life a lot easier for us as developers. And that's the thing, right? These platforms here, PaaS offerings, make it easier for developers to build and deploy the solutions, which is a big advantage for a lot of us hobbyists, at least. So that was Azure App Service for you. Now you might want to go ahead at times, create a database, that sort of thing. So once what I did was I actually built an API, a to-do API. I'm going to show it on my GitHub directly, which is actually connected on my Azure, right? And I'm going to take you to those resources and show later on how you can create a database for yourself as well. But just because I have that built here, I think I can quickly take you there. So this is a solution I built at another point of time. It's a resource group which has an app service and it has a SQL database. So first things first, I'm going to take you to that repository to show what is there in that repository for us. I have a lot of repositories. I want to see if it's available here. I don't think it is. I'm going to go to repositories now. It's going to be around somewhere. Yeah. I actually did this session internally at a different point of time. But I can share this link here. This is an API that allows you to view to-dos and all of that. So it's just gonna load. I hope that deployment is it's active. So if I send this in right now, that's gonna work. Before that, I see a query here. So every time you update, we should pull and push. No, that's the pull and push is actually a thing of Git. That's not deployment. That's not a CI/CD thing. That's just because I had an existing commit on my Git repo on GitHub, and I was pushing another commit, so it's gonna merge that before. If there are no commits that need to be pulled, every push just works. So it's gonna manage that deployment. And I see we have Harshil here in the chat. Hi Harshil. Thanks a lot for joining in. You're actually gonna be hearing from Harshil very soon, I believe. So yeah. Now this little application the API that I made earlier, that's just a Swagger UI for this API. I'll throw that link in here. This is something I built a little while back. It's another .NET based API that I have, but it leverages app service and a SQL database. So I'm going to be taking you to my resources for that. So with this, if you just try it out, you will get back an entire little. This is going to send you the entire set of information here that is available. So you can see it's got the IDs, the name of a to-do, whether it's completed or not. It's gonna let you post. So this is gonna let you add a to do to your sheet. This is going to let you get it specifically by an ID. So it's a little API that I'd worked on earlier, and this is actually connected to app service as well. So I'm going to show you how that happens. I'd made this to do API earlier, just as a test API. It's a good test API to work with. We'll check out this resource here. So just as I'd shown earlier, this was an app service instance I created. Um, it has a deployment connected to it with this repository. But one little thing it has connected with it is an Azure database as well. All right. So, I mean, I'm not going to delve into the exact workings of this because it's just another CRUD API. That's really what it is. But it does have a few fun little things though, because it's connected with an Azure SQL database instance. So I can show that I've connected it locally. All right. I mean, in this startup file that we have, um, you'll be able to see that it has. I mean, from the configuration, it gets a connection string for the database connection. So we're using a SQL server here. And fun little thing that's actually added to my configuration here. So you'll be able to see that we have a database connection added, that I'm working with, and this database connection actually is actually linking to the other SQL Server instance that I had. So I'm going to take you there. I'm going to show how you can actually work with a SQL Server instance here. I'll also probably create one. So that if you want to learn how you can do it from scratch, that's something that you can work with. So let's go back to our resource group. Here we have our SQL Server and SQL database. So in Azure, you can create a SQL Server instance for yourself. It lets you select your location, your firewall settings, your admin, your server name, all of that. You can also add an Azure Active Directory admin. You can have Azure Defender. There's a lot of configurations you can do. And it shows what all databases you have under. Now, I have this one database called ToDoDB. Just a simple name I wanted. So if I click on that instance, this is actually the same thing we had in here, essentially. This lets you see the server name once again. It has the connection strings, which was actually added to the app service instance there. And after that, you can just use it as any other SQL database you would want. So if it was just a SQL database with you have running locally, or whether it's on one of these, you can use it as any other SQL database. The fun thing about Azure SQL databases is that you can actually work with the queries directly here. So you don't always need a separate monitoring solution. So I actually don't remember my password at the moment. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna take a little sneak peek from my code base otherwise, because that's just my memory. Sorry, my bad. Let me do that once. But yeah, I mean, it's something I worked on quite a while back, so I just want to make sure that I can have a quick little look. Okay, I have that now. I'm gonna log in, authenticate myself. It cannot open because, oh yeah, my client right now isn't allowed access. So that's another thing about these. I'm gonna have to whitelist from this account. It does that for me because I'm logged in from my Azure. But okay, so if I just hop off for a second, if you go back to SQL Server, you will have certain networking options here and firewalls which allow you to add whatever client IPs you that can work with this. So I can just add my client IP for now. I think it's already been added earlier. It was creating a rule for me, but you can just add it here. All right. And I can work with that. You can actually set Azure services and resources to access the server as yes. So if there's any Azure service using this database, it doesn't have to ask for a client IP, or it doesn't create issues. But at that being said, if you wanna make it a little more secure to ensure other Azure services don't play around, you can actually set that as no, and then have the you can have a separate IP from of the instance that's running as well. This makes it convenient, for in case you're working with solutions not on Azure, or with just to add more security. So that's something you can do. So think I've added my client IP now. Did I? If I didn't, I'm just gonna save that once. Yeah, now it's added. Now I'll just hop back to that database and we'll log in and it should work. So now it's able to log in, and you can see it shows us our tables, views, stored procedures, all of that. I've got a couple of views that I've been trying around earlier. It shows that I have a little table here. So if I go ahead, I select star from you know just and I run this query, it's going to show my entire database just as what I had earlier. And I see people have been trying and playing around. So if I go back to my API for a second and I execute this, you will be able to find all of these here, which is interesting. You can actually directly add, you know, you can add this here. So if I just add play around with Azure, add LHD learn 2022, and I've done this because I've been playing around for the last couple of sessions, and I execute this directly. It's gonna add that for me. It's gonna send back the ID of this as well. So if I execute it here, it'll show that it's added that last one. It's also gonna be visible here if I run this query once again. So the 20th one's been added here. Fun thing, anything I play around here will end up happening on this database, because these two databases are connected. Harshal has an interesting little to do here. Sure. I mean, Harshal is quite the expert at enough technologies. I'm not sure what he will be creating on that front. He's probably going to figure out a lot of this a lot quicker than I have. So, yeah, why not? Uh huh. So, yeah, that's the little database we have. So, this is just another API that it created quite a while back. If you want to create a database for yourself, you can actually do so from the databases category. It'll give you all the options here. So even if you don't want a SQL database and you want to work with something like Cosmos DB, Postgres, MySQL, any of those, instead you can do that. You can actually search for more options in the marketplace. So if for now I am looking at database options, we've got Cassandra on an Oracle Linux server available here. We've got Redis Cache. We've got InfluxDB, which I believe is a time series database. You've got SQL Edge for IoT Edge. We've got Apache Web Service. There's a lot of options here. You've also got data lakes for big data solutions. So there's a lot. There's a huge variety of what you can have when it comes to the Azure marketplace, and it's really an extensive solution, because if databases is the one I was talking about here. You can also work with a lot with all of these categories. I'm seeing questions here. So I mean, if I talk about my favorite databases, typically if I'm working with a relational database, I just like SQL or MySQL. Those are convenient options. For those two, actually, if I'm working with .NET, Entity Framework works really well for me with SQL, so it makes life extremely convenient, and it's performant. So why not? There is an option for for NoSQL databases as well. So these are the few options that it's going to show you here. You can actually see more and find them. You have MongoDB's instances that are you've got Influx, you've got Cassandra there. There's a lot of options here. Tiger Graph is available as well, so that's definitely there. You've got Atlas here. So at the MongoDB Atlas instance that you see on MongoDB's own platform, that's essentially what this is, and you can set it up. Aside from that, though, Azure has its own Cosmos DB service. Like, it has Cosmos DB, which is a NoSQL um, database offering for from Azure's own end. So, I mean, you can create those resources from here as well. I can show how you can create that. I mean, you can go ahead, you can choose which one you want. It does have a native API that leverages SQL. You have one for MongoDB. I've worked with their MongoDB API in the past once. It has a service for Cassandra, so you can actually choose either of these that you want. And really, this is basically an API that Cosmos DB has. So this lets you work with um, Cosmos DB using SQL. That's essentially what this is. If suppose you wanted to create a Cosmos DB API for MongoDB, you can just click on create here and create an account for yourself. It'll allow you to select what version, your location, account name, all of that. Next up, it has options for global distribution, and also that's something you can look into based on your use case. If suppose I want to create a SQL database like the one that I showed earlier, I can create one as well. So, you know, you can set up your subscription, choose whichever one you want to work with, select the name of your database, the server. I mean, that's just showing the older server because that showcased that. You can create a new one if you want for instead. Elastic pools are there, to provide just like a simple cost-effective solution for managing performance of multiple databases within a fixed budget. You can select the compute and storage you want. So like that's essentially it's setting up an underlying VM for you to work with, and that way if you want a larger VM, you can do that. You can set up something smaller as well. It also has geo redundant backup setup. So that's exactly what I was talking about earlier, right? Like in case there is an issue with that specific region, like suppose there's a natural disaster, you've got options to help support. Now, as far as Cockroach DB goes, that's an entirely separate solution. Um, I'm not sure if Azure has support for that, but that just goes to talk about different offerings. You'll have so many different databases available in the world. Some of them have their own unique dedicated solutions, but you can actually search in the marketplace and see if that's available. I'm not 100% sure though, but you can do that. And as far as endpoint goes, you don't have, I mean, yeah, you can just have different deployments on, like, you can have a separate deployment on app service for your front end, a separate for your back end. That actually something quite a few organizations do because it helps you decouple your solution. So, the last organization I was working at before I started off at AppRite in my summer, when we were actually building for another organization. We were consulting and building a POC for another organization. So our React front end was deployed separately, and we had a .NET backend that was deployed on a separate instance. And what that let us do is it let us develop those independent of each other. It did decouple the application, and that way the API is accessible on any other platform that you want. So it's actually a cool practice if you want to do that. I see a query about AppRite. So for now, AppRite is supporting MariaDB, but now we're also going to see support come in for, we'll have MongoDB supported. We will, I believe, see support for Astra and Postgres, apart from MariaDB and MySQL. That's MySQL essentially. So those four are going to be supported directly through AppRite, at least, which is pretty cool. So, I mean, there is support for both relational and, well, SQL and NoSQL databases there. AppRite's going to be fun. If you want, I can show that. I mean, I have a little instance deployed of DigitalOcean droplet. Uh, so I mean, I can show that, but sure, if folks are interested in that, you can let me know here in the chat. I'll show you how you can play around with AppRite particularly. We're having something very exciting coming up in the next week, so stay tuned for that. That's going to be interesting, definitely. But yeah, that's a few of the resources we have here. I was talking about VMs as well. You can actually go ahead, you can create a virtual machine through Azure. So, if you look at compute, you'll see that we have a few different options. You can have enterprise systems. You can have basic individual stuff like Debian as well. Like, non-enterprise offerings. But yeah, you can create VMs. You can also create function apps. There's all of that. So there's quite a few offerings here that you can leverage. I mean, if I talk about the options that are available for VMs, just let me show you the images for a second. You've got Windows Server, you've got Ubuntu, Debian, all of that. Then you've got dedicated stuff for application infrastructure like CentOS. You've got other OSs. You can actually, there's a huge list that you can go through, and you're gonna it's quite the list of compute options you have available. So that's definitely there. Apart from that, one really fun thing that I was talking about earlier were function apps, which are serverless functions you can create. This is one thing that I play very often with. I love working with serverless functions. So that's something you can do. As far as school projects with cloud technologies go, I mean, I have been working with a few different solutions for a while. So sometime back, I was playing around with a solution that lets you fake a call. Um, you know, in case you're in a tricky situation that you want to get out of. So I made a little solution that essentially does. I made an app for my Android Wear smartwatch that basically by clicking on a button, it fakes a call to your phone, and that leverages Twilio and Azure functions. So I think I have that Azure function up here right now. I can showcase that function. I think I don't have that app on my smartwatch right now, but yeah, I do have the repository for that available. That's something that I actually built in one of our other local hack days last year. So, but that was just a personal hack that I'd been working on. So if I go back, um, that was a little hack that I built. So it had a serverless function that was being triggered here that faked a call. So it leveraged Twilio to do that. And I wrote an article about that earlier. So if anyone wants to know how I built that, you can actually build it for yourself. So as far as going for Windows goes, for a VM, yes, it does ask if you have a license available because you would need to authenticate a license. But for something like you know, for app service, where you just need to deploy, for that you do not need a Windows license. For a VM though, you would, because that's essentially you running, when you're just using their resources to set up a computer for you. That's what you're doing. So for that, yes, it does hope that you expect that you have a license. If you I mean, that's definitely a thing you'll have to keep in mind. But yeah, I believe I should have. I think I should have fake call somewhere around. If I don't, that'll be sad, because that's a fun app that I've been working on for a bit, and I don't think I can see it right now. But there was another little solution I created a while back that basically lets you rickroll people. So I made an app at another local hack day that that one I actually built on stream. So what that does is it lets you. Oh, sorry, it wasn't at local hack day. I think it was at MLS Init this year. So if I hop over to that repository, what that lets you do is it lets you rickroll people. So just one phone call and it will rickroll someone. And that one leveraged Twilio as well. I have the function app for that here right now. So if I access this function app, it'll show me whatever functions I have. It'll show me recent calls. I haven't made one very recently. I haven't executed this app very recently, so that's there. But I can look at the function. It's an HTTP triggered one. Um, Let me see where that is, because that one, yeah, that's the project that I had. This actually leverages one Xamarin app is just making a REST API call. And the reason I put it on a function is and not directly in the app is because I want this API to be accessible elsewhere. So, that's where I built the function. And here you can actually test this API. So if I add any one of your numbers, um, you know, you can leverage this and have fun with people. I think it's only showing the function, yes, because it's running from a package file. It's deployed from there directly. But you can find the code base here. So yeah, I mean, I've built fun apps using cloud. That's there. My Imagine Cup solution was made using cloud as well. I unfortunately cannot show the code base for that at the moment, but the functioning and the running of that is all visible here. So that's something you can check out. I worked initially at, we know you did at Happy Birthday MLH. We took it from hackathon to hackathon, looking at roles and just building as we go. Um, we built it progressively, but it worked out. It was a nice hack, so you can check it out. So if I look at this little solution, I can see how it integrates. It shows an HTTP trigger function, all of that. We get all of this information here, and I mean, the code really what it's doing is as soon as you make a little get call that sends the phone number, it's gonna call you up, and in the call you'll be rickrolled. So that's the app I made, and this one was actually built on Stream, so you can actually find the stream on how I built that here. It's a fun solution. I had a lot of fun with this one. So that's definitely there. So you can actually, after building a solution, you can just deploy it here. You can write code in when you create a function directly as well. So if suppose I was to create a function, and I can do a small little function right now, just a small one. If I go ahead and I create this, we're just gonna, I'll tell you what, no, we don't need a new one for this. We'll go ahead, we created that one for LSD Learn Cloud. Um, LSD Learn 2022 test. I'm keeping a long name just, because just, well, why not? There's a lot of stacks you can work with. You've got .NET, Node.js, Python, Java, PowerShell. You can start work with PowerShell as well. I'm just going to do .NET as well, my convenience. The safe version, like, you have 3.1 here. You can also run isolated functions using .NET 5, but for that you'll have to work with, I mean, you can do that through VS Code here. I mean, .NET 3.1 is the one that I work with typically. .NET Core 3.1, so that's there. I'm just going to select my location here. We'll go over to hosting. A new storage account is what's going to be created for, because it's a .NET function, I prefer Windows. You have different plans here that you can use. I'm just going to use the consumption serverless plan that we have. You have networking options you can have, but that's primarily for premium functions. I don't need that right now. For monitoring, we're going to keep application insights open because it makes it convenient to look at it. We'll leave the tag for now. That's okay. So I'm just going to create this. And okay, Harshil is having fun ideas. Twitch bot that calls Aditya. Okay, that's gonna be interesting to see. That'll be fun. So yeah, it's just gonna quickly deploy this for me, and I'll try and show how you can create function apps here directly, because I think it does provide that option. It creates something called it has an in-app editor. And it's creating a storage account so that you can upload the function there. That's what it's essentially doing. So yeah, that's what we're gonna have. So let's have this. We'll just see as this gets made. We're having fun in the chat. I'm liking the chat right now. I think this is probably the last thing I'm gonna work on in this session, but we're definitely having fun. Right. So you can actually, yeah, it seems like our resource is created, and I've gone over to the resource. So now that I have my resources, just like that portal I showed you earlier, we're gonna go to functions, and we're gonna create one. So as I select this, it gives me an option to work with platforms I want. I typically use VS Code otherwise, but you can actually create this in your portal. We're gonna select HTTP trigger, because what that's gonna do is that's gonna basically as soon as it gets an HTTP post or a GET request, it triggers the function. So that'll be convenient to run here. But that being said, there's a lot of options. So like, if you want a function that runs using a cron schedule, you can set up timer trigger. If you want something for Azure's queue storage, service bus, blob storage, all of that. You have integrations for SendGrid as well. So if you get a confirmation email, if your function sends a confirmation email, it's going to send that if a new item gets added to a queue. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of options. You have stuff for Kafka, RabbitMQ. SignalR is .NET solution for, that's the WebSocket solution that .NET has. So there's a lot of options. Yeah, we're just going to stick to our basic HTTP triggered functions. Okay. So it's going to create that little function for me. And now that I go there, I can go ahead, it'll create that for me. Now the code option is going to look a little different because it's because we didn't just push it from our device. So that's the difference we have. Now this is a basic function here that we have. We've got a function.json, a readme here for it, that tells us what this function is doing. That's a little that's just a markdown file for you. It has a function.json. That's the one that we could see earlier as well. For that, lets us know what methods we can leverage here, and a run.csx. So that's a different format we have here for these functions specifically. I'm just gonna leave it at this because we're just testing this, but that's a basic template function. What it's gonna do is, if suppose I add a little variable here, name, and I send it in the get or the post request, it's just gonna send a message, hello name. This function triggered, this HTTP function triggered successfully. So you can look at the integrations for this. If you want, it's gonna show that it returns an HTTP output. It shows all of these options. It has what function is here. It shows the trigger, all of that. You can monitor this directly from here. It has monitoring options, and that you can actually can take you to your application insights as well. So there's a lot of stuff here. Function keys are there in case you want to, or you want to have authorization options for your function key. For now, we're not doing too much of that. So I'm just going to show how you can test this directly. If I want to test and run, you can use the post method. You can use the get as well. Totally your call. For that, you would have to add a query. So, if I add a query here, that is name. And if I add Aditya, I can run this. Body won't matter in case, we're running a get request. So it'll show us how that would look. If suppose it was a post request, because that's Azure there, if I run it now, this is just a test environment we have. It essentially runs this as an API for us. Okay, I'm not sure why it's still showing Aditya. It shouldn't. Let me just delete this. I think it's showing the older output that we had. But I mean, it shows that our function has been triggered here. Let me just close this for a second. I mean, it does show that it executed, so that's there. I believe it's just showing the older response here right now. Yeah, we'll just run this once. You can also change the timeout and all settings. Yeah, now it shows Azure because I guess it's just it was the trigger. It was showing the older output, but now it shows hello Azure. If suppose I did not have this thing here though, if or let's just say we're taking a get request, but there's no name parameter. If I run this now, it's going to show a different output. It's going to say it executed successfully, pass a name in the query string. Now, if I go to monitor, it's going to show I had these calls here. It takes a little time. We had multiple calls, but it shows those, and you can check all of this information. What you can also do is, if we go back to code and test, I believe you can just get the URL for this. So you can actually, yeah, you can get the function URL, and you can run it whenever, wherever you want. So it has the code there. That's an authorization code that it has. You can actually create it without an authorization code as well. So that's definitely there. And if I go back to my resource group now, because I want to show application insights once. Yeah, that option's there. I'm in configuration once again, just as app service. You can actually add any little environment variables or connection strings you want, just the same as earlier. So in the rickroll function I had, what I did was in my environment variables here, in the that's essentially application settings, all I did was I added my Twilio auth token, all of that, because that's not something you should expose in your code. This lets you do that. If we now go to application insights, have a look there. What it's going to do is it's going to let it links to the resource. That resource is there in a resource group, but this way you can actually get insights to all the responses, requests, everything that was made. Like, we had these two. Let's just check our performance. It lets us check failures. I think one really cool thing that I find in application insights is, it creates a little map to let us understand what's happening here. So if you make any call outside of your app to another API, for example, it lets you view that as well. And I think that might be visible in the Rickroll application. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, but it does give you a lot of insights on that front. So we had multiple calls here. It lets you investigate performance, lets you see each run as it was. If there's any errors, it lets you know all of that as well. So it gives you a lot of information. Now, for us, it was Central India, so it shows where this call was made, because I believe that's the area where they have their Central India servers. So there's a lot of information it shows. And I don't. Okay, so it doesn't show resources on your dashboard after deletion, I believe. Um, all of those resources that were shown earlier on my dashboard are ones that actually exist there. So that's resources I actually have. Whew. So yeah, that was a lot of stuff we covered today. I definitely had fun with this. I think probably I'm gonna let you all run around, explore these tech. I'm gonna see if I have application insights running here to see if it showed an external call, but that map does show a lot of what's happening. So I'm actually not 100% sure if it shows that, but okay, I see. I did not have this fully set up earlier. So yeah, well, that's that, unfortunately. But never mind. That's okay. I think it just doesn't have recent calls. But if suppose I make a call, I'll tell you what. I actually have the app running. I can just maybe do that one last try. See if that shows me any information here, because we don't have any recent calls right now. Okay, for the last 30 days it does. So it shows where we have failed requests, where it works, because it shows all my testing, all of that. Wow, that's actually a lot of requests. I am surprised. To be honest, I'm actually surprised. I did not realize that's how much it was being used. But that's what it is. It shows all of these calls here for us. So quite a lot of info. You can check for the last few days, 3 days, 7 days. It shows quite a lot of information here. So that's pretty nice. It shows where it failed, where it didn't. So you can. I'll tell you what. If I look at these failed requests, it's gonna show what dependencies failed as well. So on these, there was an issue with Twilio, where the calls on Twilio kind of failed. Um, it's going to show all of that, because Twilio's API was being called here. So that's actually a pretty handy technique that you have. All right, so that kind of brings us to the end. I think, yeah, I've discussed quite a lot. This would have been a lot to take in. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now because I think we have another few minutes or so. Harsh is gonna jump in very soon, I believe, so that's gonna be nice. But yeah, I think we've had fun. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that we covered. As far as this goes, yeah, no, I'm actually not running. I'm not purchasing all the credits. I have those from a different space, so that's there. I'm actually running on free credits everywhere. I'm not leveraging. I'm not purchasing stuff. Fortunately, at this point of time, so it works out well. Fortunately. Thanks a lot for that. I'm sure, I mean, I'm not someone who's very proficient around AWS, but that being said, it'd be cool if, because I think we have had sessions in the past at different instances around AWS as well. You can probably find those on the MLH YouTube. If you look around, I think, I believe we've had a few. So you can check those out. But yeah, this was great. I enjoyed talking about cloud, talking about Azure. I do want to ask at this point if there are any last questions any of you might have, because we're just getting close to the end of this session. Like, we can take a couple right now. I need a sip of water. Any good resources to learn? Yes, I totally forgot about that. Thank you so much for bringing that up. So if I go to my Azure documentation, right? I mean, to Microsoft Learn right now for Azure, that's one of the best resources you can find. Let me just share my screen quickly. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I totally forgot that I had to. It slipped my mind for a second. So yeah, we have Microsoft Learn, which has a lot of information and all around Azure, how you can get started with Azure. You can actually go ahead, search by product or by role, and it gives you quite a lot of learning paths, whether it's around Azure SQL, whether it's around other services, Azure fundamentals for your certifications, all of that. So you can learn about Azure from here, but Learn itself has quite a lot of content otherwise that you can look at as well. And it helps you prepare for certifications. For this you can check that out. I haven't done any exams on Azure personally yet, but yeah, I mean, I could. It's definitely cool. It's just that I've a not at the time. B, I haven't had. I mean, it's just didn't think too much about it. As far as platforms preference go, I mean, Azure versus AWS is, it's just both of them have their own offerings. One's gonna have support, like, they're all equivalent. So you can explore both of them, see whatever fits your use case more. I just like working with Azure because I have credits for it, and B, I've been playing around with Azure for a while. So I that's a personal preference. But that being said, AWS is a fantastic platform. It has lovely offerings. You should always go ahead, check that out. It's gonna be cool. Do I need to buy a credit card for this? Um, okay, so if you're a student with a .edu ID, you don't actually need to use a credit card. You can just use your .edu email. Aside from that, you can actually if you don't have a credit card, I think you can try reaching out to the team, sharing proof of you being a student. I think they do help out from time to time as well. So you can try reaching out to them about that. I do know that the Imagine Cup team does help on that front. They do support. So if you're participating in Imagine Cup, for example, if you're a registered participant and you're having trouble with Azure, you can always reach out to them. But I mean, aside from that, credit cards really are a verification tool. It's not going to charge you when your free credits are running. That's definitely there. It's a verification tool primarily. Debit cards, unfortunately, I don't think will be accepted on that. So on that front, If that's the case, that's pretty cool. Typically, what it does is it checks the top level domain. So ADO works. I think apart from that, if you have any other colleges that are leveraging, like Azure or Microsoft 365, it works out on those as well. .edu tends to be, I believe that used to be a condition earlier, but now, yeah, right. If you have a college ID, you can definitely try that. It should be good. Thanks a lot for sharing that. They've probably expanded the list of domains there in that case. I think it used to be a little limited earlier, but since it's a service that's being used a lot more, they might have increased that list. So try with your college ID. That's the way to go. If you have a college ID, you can try that generally, even if it's not a .edu, because I think Nish mentions that it works with any domain email provided by college. That's something you can try. They've probably changed that requirement. You can also try through the GitHub Student Developer Pack. They do have an offering around that, so go ahead, check that out. That's a good idea. Okay, that's cool, Nish. Thanks a lot for sharing that. If that worked, Rishita, you can probably try out with your college email ID, even if it's not a .edu, and see if that works. So there's a few ways that you can do that. All right, that brings me to the end. Thank you so much to all of you for hanging around. I definitely enjoyed interacting with all of you at Local Hack Day Learn. This was definitely great. We have a few more days of some lovely sessions and all. We have a few coming up today. I believe there's one around authorization and authentication systems just after this. So that's one to stick around for. Do not leave Twitch because that's going to be a really fun session. And I think that one, if I just check for a second, I believe for that particular section, we're gonna have Harshil there. Harshil was hanging around in the chat earlier. And yes, that one's by Harshil. He's gonna be here just immediately after in a minute. So stick around. It's gonna be nice. All right. And that's it for me, folks. Thank you so much once again. See you all later. Bye bye.